there's going to be a wave of people that are about to come into the workforce that they're just doing this stuff in their sleep. It's completely native to how they work and live. Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Paige, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. Today, we're joined by Neil Goodrich, CIO of Envista Forensics, and previously CIO and Chief Innovation Officer at M. Holland. And welcome to the show, Neil.
Thanks for having me.
And we obviously talk a lot about AI on the Talking AI podcast. And whenever you're talking about something new and emergent like AI and generative AI, the topic of innovation naturally comes up. And Neil, as a leader running innovation, doing it at several organizations, like the burning question I got is, why is change so damn hard? What is it about change that organizations just struggle with?
I don't know. You think about in your personal life, you go to the gym
Yeah.
and you don't expect to stay the same week to week. You want the change.
Yeah.
If you're out in the garage trying to teach yourself how to do woodworking, you don't want to stay the same. So it's funny, you get to work and then there's a general aversion to change. But it's so funny, we chase it in all the other parts. I think maybe it's uncertainty. People feel like it's going to get uncertain and they don't like the uncertainty. But I think that's been something that we try to turn into a positive, right? And change averse. So let's go celebrate some change. Like, that change is cool. Let's make a big deal out of that change.
That's interesting. It's like that human nature aspect of it. Humans just aren't good at change, but that celebration, that gamification of it, in a sense, interesting
Right.
component there. And in previous
Um,
chats that we've had, you've talked both about little I innovation and big I innovation. It was actually the first time I'd heard about it framed in this way, but what does that mean? And then what is AI? AI, generative AI, whichever you want to
yeah.
frame it as. Is it little I? Is it big I? Where does it fit in this kind of?
I think it's stolen originally out of the sort of Horizon framework. I think McKinsey had you have the big long project, takes a long time, it's very uncertain, and then you have the medium, the small bites. So we started thinking about that from an innovation standpoint, which is small bite-sized stuff that you could go after, and that's the small I. The incremental piece, which is still innovation, it
Yeah.
still creates a culture of, let's celebrate change, give us your idea, right? Even though it's not a moonshot. And it's the innovation that start to expose, whether it's developers learning new skills because it's a new technology
Mhm.
platform and it's this little bite-sized easy thing, and then they ladder up and then, oh, we can take on the next small I project. And in the background, you've got the big I projects, right? The year-long, the 18 months, the multi-phase, the uncertain projects. Those, to me, are the big I's. It's funny, I actually think AI can be both, depending on what you're doing with it, right? You can have it be
Yeah.
really a big deal, or it can be one of those bite-sized undertakings. Is it a little piece of code that reads emails and makes sure that a record goes to the right place? That's innovation. That's a terrible
Hmm.
part of somebody's job today, right? We can just take that off their desk. If you ask them, I'm pretty sure they would tell you that's innovation. That like their life got better, right? The organization
Yeah.
got more value out
Yeah.
of that. But so it's some kind of multi-part competitive differentiator, right? You're going to turn out some new product that's powered by AI. That's also innovation, just a different category. I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your question. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. That's a really, I think, interesting perspective, because you can't think of it on both spectrums, right? It could be, to your point, like AI literally is gonna, that holy shit moment of, it's gonna change our entire business model and we got to do something about it. Or it's like, okay, developers now have a co-pilot they're going to start using in an incremental way. Still big change, but it's smaller in nature. And I guess too, you could have it to where some of those small I's ladder up into a larger I innovation. There's probably some of those occurrences, I would think, as well.
Yeah, hand down. So we have we work with the DePaul Innovation Lab here in Chicago. We're based in Chicago. And we gave them sort of an open challenge. We said, if we give you what we have in terms of data, can you go build this tool? And they went after it. It was really cool to see. They were every week learning, right? Because stuff was changing under their feet, right? And literally models were changing.
Mhm.
Microsoft services they were using got changed in the middle. But along the way, one of the great examples, they built a essentially a QA part of this tool that was
Yeah.
supposed to ensure that the confidence in the outcome was high. Essentially, what they were doing is they were assessing the quality of our we do cause and origin reporting largely for the insurance industry. So we send field investigators out to look at a collapsed building, a fire, and we determine what happened. Handwritten notes are a big deal in our world. They fuel the final report. They are used in legal cases. So they wrote this service that assessed the completeness of the field investigators' notes. And to
Mm.
them, that was just a thing they had to write to get out of the way to get to this outcome. And when they demoed that piece, we were all like, wait, stop, hold on. Did you just write a note quality assessor service? We're like, stop the presses. Like we could just, that's its own product, like right there. You just saved every technical manager in our organization, right? He doesn't have to read all those notes anymore. So you would never find that. No one's going to wake up in the morning and be like, "What we should do? We should write a service that assesses the complete." That's just not on. It's not how you're going to think about it. And I think undertaking that's the moonshots, right? Like whether or not the product
Mhm.
ends up being what you think it's going to do, that discovery process. I used the word serendipitous yesterday, and I got a lot of heat
Mhm.
for it in the office. Everyone thought it was a flighty word, and I was like, "No, man, look it
Really?
up. Like, it's
Yeah.
unplanned, sort of weird, lucky, unplanned." And I'm like, "That's what you're after. You're gonna go
Yeah.
put yourself in circumstances so that you can maximize your chance for serendipity." And so that's what happened. And we learned a bunch about other potential product ideas that were simpler, but if we went and built them, they would be part of this larger tool later. And so it was
Yeah.
a really great ladder up. I think you said ladder up earlier. There, where build these building blocks, then you recombine them at the end, and they make this third tool.
Yeah,
It's
I love
cool.
this example, like, and this is what triggered us chatting here today was having this discussion about this example. You mentioned, like, you went for the home run and you got, like, these tangential base hits out of it. I'm curious, do you recommend that? Go for the home run and just you're gonna naturally get some of those base hits out of it and just make sure you're looking for those? Or should you just go for some of the base hits that may be easier, or maybe it's some combination in your approach to innovation?
Yeah, but I think we have it's such a lame answer, like both. 'Cause
Yeah.
but I think they do different jobs.
Mhm.
So currently we've got our team working on sort of bite-sized, simple use cases. What's that doing? That's continuing to expose the organization to change, right? From a
Mhm.
cultural perspective for the organization, they see us doing stuff. The technical team gets to put their hands on and practically apply a whole new set of tools in a low complexity, low pressure situation, because that's where you're going to learn best. So no one's asking when this piece of code that's going to route emails is going to be done because no one knows we can do it. So
Mhm.
they have the space to learn. So to me, that's almost development and learning component, those bite-sized pieces. And
Mhm.
then the bigger long arc piece, big innovation, we started with an idea that if it worked would be powerful. So it wasn't just a random idea. We were going to win either way. We were either going to get this big moonshot idea that worked, or we were going to learn why it doesn't work. What's wrong with our environment? And so we did learn that. We have data organization challenges that would prevent us from doing that effectively. If
Mhm.
we really wanted to do this big tool that we were thinking about, we'd have to change a bunch of behaviors and processes. So we got the recipe, for the
Yeah.
prerequisite change to do this thing. I think that the outcome based, right? If you're thinking about, I want to do this thing, and if this doesn't work, we're at least going to learn about other alternatives or prerequisites to go do the big change and tackling stuff that's practical, gets people in there. We talk a lot about, and you and I have talked about,
Mhm.
when somebody brings a challenge to you, the technical team only knows what they know. So they're going to go right to the tool
Yeah.
sets that are already in their mental toolbox, right? That's procedure and SQL. So how do you get AI? How do you get the art of the possible? How do you put those new AI tools in that catalog of options?
Mhm.
And there's no fast way to do that. They have to get exposed to it. They got to wrench on the engine. They got to get their hands dirty with it. And I think those are all, that's to us why you do a portfolio of different things, because it's all
Yeah.
different stages of learning.
Yeah, you almost need that fire starter, that art of the possible, so folks can so they even have an idea of what to start considering. It's the whole concept of you have your known knowns, your known unknowns, and your unknown unknowns. There's a lot in that unknown category that you gotta surface. But completely off topic, like this DePaul Innovation Labs, it seems very interesting and a cool thing. Is this the students doing this, or is it who's a part of that? I'm just out of curiosity. It seems like a really neat
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Shout out to them.
They are connected to it's graduate students, and the original founder still runs it, who's a longtime professor there, and they will leverage existing students. They will sometimes uh, get some alumni who have some experience.
Mhm.
So it's cool because you think about this vast network of new skills that nobody has in your workforce, because when they were going to school, those skills didn't exist.
Yeah.
And these guys are chomping at the bit to apply stuff they're learning in class on
Mhm.
Tuesday. They get to come to the lab and do stuff. Yeah, they do a lot of open challenge work, right? Can
That's
you
cool.
figure out a way to do this? And it's been cool. It's a cool relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, you were telling the story and I picture like the student presenting this thing and you're like, "Stop, what was that thing?" And the student's like freaking out, like, "What did
They
I do?
did.
What did I do wrong?"
All right.
But yeah, again, off topic. I was thinking about this yesterday on a walk, shower, I can't remember, but there's this whole group of kids in school now that are using these tools just naturally part of their life. They don't have all the baggage and history that we do. So once they get into the workforce, I think that's going to be really interesting because they're going to bring this whole new approach that's just native to how they do things, which gets back to the point where you got to start adopting this stuff because there's going to be a wave of people that are about to come into the workforce that they're just doing this stuff in their sleep. It's completely native to how they work and live.
It's it's not. It's funny. The technology changes, but if I say to you, how do your parents use email? How do you use email? How do your younger employees? How do teenagers? Those are four different uses of email, right?
Yeah.
Like it seems, and I think we came up in an era where the email was to us what AI is today, right? We just use email. Email is part of that. And you
Yeah.
look at texting behavior and the level of integration of texting behavior and the way different generations leverage the texting, right? It's all
Mhm.
about where that technology hits you in your life cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of, are all your working habits baked already? Are they being formed? And how do you artificially insert stuff as a whatever 30, 40-year-old employee? How do you
Mhm.
go artificially put the AI pieces in your toolbox when this kid coming out of school at 22, those are just in there already. They're just part of the
Yeah.
option set. And I think that's what sparked a lot of our sort of education piece, right?
Yeah, which I guess gets back to the innovation programs you're running, making sure you have a diverse group in there with some of those younger people and just different organizations and whatnot.
And that
But
was cool
Neil,
too.
yeah, I want to do something a little different, a little fun, and you can cheat with ChatGPT in this exercise. But as I was thinking about this episode, we're talking about innovation, the process of innovation, right? Like how you go about innovation. And I was thinking, AI and everything that's been going on over the past year or two has the potential to actually disrupt the process of innovation. So I'm curious, like a thought experiment between me and you, we can just riff on random ideas. Again, use AI, your favorite plot or ChatGPT if you
Sure.
want. But where do you think, like what parts in the process do you think AI is either going to change the process, enhance the process, maybe it makes it worse in some areas? Any thoughts around that? And if you want a second to think, I got a couple top of mind. I was cheating with ChatGPT ahead of time.
Mm, let's hear yours. Let's hear yours.
Okay.
I think that would be interesting.
So the first one I had, uh, like the innovation part, right? You could do the brainstorming, the ideation, all that, but you want to like make something tangible to show it off, which is the whole idea of like rapid prototyping, proof of concepting, all that. Which, as if you're going to do like a real prototype, that's like a developer resource, or it's just something that's a wireframe or whatnot. But with AI, like now anybody can go from like 0 to 60, especially in the proof of concepting phase, very
Yeah.
quickly. And there's actually code below it. I was playing around with Claude Sonnet
That's
and
what
then
I was gonna,
Artifact. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Now you can have anybody in the organization with an idea, which is super cool because you have the business people that now can participate in a more intentional way, in a much faster way, which as you know, with innovation, the faster the cycles, the more feedback loops. We did a lab recently with one of our solution architects, and he's building like a POC in a few minutes during the lab. And it's just like one of those mind blowing experiences. And this is just going to be native and news. Like that inserted into the innovation process is really like interesting and compelling to me.
yeah. I the idea that the patient pool, right? The more people that are putting ideas in the pool, the higher chances that you find that lightning strike, right? So you're like, how do I
Mhm.
get more participation? And if all of a sudden I think about a lot because I can't draw, which has been one of my great frustrations in life.
Yeah.
I like failed in art class, like I could not shade, right? Uh, Mid Journey has essentially, I felt like being in the Matrix, which
Mm.
they're like, I need to fly a helicopter up the right, like I can now draw effectively.
Yeah.
So all these things that I had in my mind that I could never really render, I can do, and I think about folks in your organization who are like, oh yeah, it would be like a screen like this. That's one whole version where people can get a wireframe, render an image,
Yeah.
right, to your it's prototyping, but it's also the communication and sharing of storytelling where you could start to align people or get people excited. You gonna say something?
But no, keep going.
You gonna say something? Sorry. Oh, sorry. The code underneath it, that's just all bonus round. Like
Yeah.
the idea that you would be able to jump off on that. But the workable prototype, the ideation is questionable. That was my
Okay.
initial gut reaction when you asked me that question. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, ideation." But if you've ever asked it, if you've ever asked him this thing, like first time you ask it, yeah, a couple of them are you're like, "Oh, okay, that's good." But you keep pushing the do again button, and you start
Mhm.
to see it recite. And you're like, I think your acceleration play is gonna be the answer in a lot of those dimensions. I don't think it's
Yeah.
gonna. The, it's not gonna be the source of anything. It's not gonna help you with
Mhm.
the coming up with the idea, right? I do think putting the power to build and show, or think about the departmental power user who is allowed to build Power BI reports, right?
Mhm.
For their team. But now you've got somebody, or the person who builds Power Apps for their team, and
Yeah.
now they have the ability to prototype like applications.
Yep. Yeah. So the brainstorming one's interesting because early on, I had the same kind of notion. I was like, okay, the response is generic and whatnot. As I'm playing with it, and there's like this nuance where I find it useful is not like giving me this amazing answer out of the gate, but it gives me lists of ideas relative to what I'm brainstorming on. And then that triggers other ideas. And then I go deeper on the ideas. So it's almost like this co-pilot terms used a lot, but it's like this extra person on the team to put out ideas, and it's getting better with each, iteration that comes out. So that part's been interesting. Just it's like this extra brainstorming. I almost view it as like this extra person in the room. Almost, it's like this person participating in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the exercise a bit. But you mentioned like you're horrible at drawing, hand drawing and whatnot, but like now you can just do that bad wireframe drawing and say, "Hey, take a picture of it, turn this into a clickable prototype," and it can do that now, which is like crazy cool as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, the notion that I look at we had this year, we had a person join our data reporting team who we use Power BI. He was Power
Mhm.
BI specialist, but he wasn't just a back end developer. He had spent a lot of time in the prototype world. And so you watched what happened when he brought a clickable prototype
Yeah.
to a discussion, and the ability for people to rally around. Oh no, move the button. And he could literally like move the button while you're having the conversation. So now you're talking
Mhm.
about that was one specialist, and now you can do that at scale, fast and dirty, enough to get on the fly. To your point, right? You're in the middle of some kind of a
Mhm.
discussion with people, and you're like, oh, let me just. So I think about the ability to, I guess it's not iterate, but me, the riskiest part of all the making of digital products is always that
Yeah.
front UI design. It's the part that has the highest number of iterations. Oh, yeah, now that you
Mhm.
say that, the button doesn't really belong there. So the idea that you could lock that up faster, more
Mhm.
aligned in the first iteration of the product, that to me is a straight line to getting the value out of that digital product faster. Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier that was doing the lab around proof of concepting, where it originated from, he was on a call with a prospect talking about an idea, and he was in the background like building this PSC, and at the end of it, he's like, "Oh, this?" It's what? But the one you just mentioned
Yeah.
though, around on the data side, I think the other area that's interesting too is like access to not only data but insights. And I remember back to the world where I got to put in a ticket for somebody to go create a SQL query, which led me to learn how to write SQL because I hated waiting so long. But now you can just like conversationally talk with data. I think that's another huge unlock. It's like this whole it's overarching concept of getting people democratization of all the things across the
Yeah.
organization that's potentially possible in this innovation process.
Yeah. The idea that I think you have to one of the Copilot commercials where literally you don't have you don't have a list of Power BI reports anymore. You just show up and you're like, show me sales for the Northwest region over the last 12 months
Yeah.
with clients who did it, and like it renders it. I've yet to see that actually work. Our data is probably not organized well enough to get
Mm,
there. Again, prerequisite, right? The idea that you're all of a sudden, if you want that outcome, oh, I just built your roadmap for you. If you want that, then you're going to have to go do these other prerequisite activities.
yep.
Um, that's going to be a promised land, right? The idea that job changes on the data and reporting team. There's no more report builder.
Mhm.
Those guys become people who are making sure the data is organized, that it has relationships, that it's tagged. They're all about curating the data because nobody has to build the visual part anymore, which is
Yep.
unbelievably cool and then simultaneously terrifying. For example, if you run a professional services company that builds reporting visualizations,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Now you're like, I don't know what to tell. So that's the disruption part that me wringing my hands about the AI piece. Like all the great things we're talking about, where yes, right,
Yeah.
I can render my own prototype. But democratization, speed, like all that stuff, the number of people who can now contribute to the idea pool, and what's the impact of all of that? How
Mhm.
does that change roles? Right? The idea that a developer potentially, who said this? I was somewhere, and so one of the panelists said this. They said think about a developer who's not necessarily writing code anymore, but whose job is to write really great use cases
Hmm.
and QA checks so that the automation has really strong outcomes.
Yeah.
So that was a mind blow where you're like, the job's not going away, but the roles and responsibilities inside that JD are totally different. And you're like, we're not
Oh yeah.
preparing anybody for that, like that. Those kind of transformation.
Yeah, it's that doer to
Yeah.
orchestrator we talk a lot about. I got one more for you. I think, well, one, maybe two. The research side of it, like performing research, which is just a pain in the ass, having to go Google stuff and things like
Yeah.
that. I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
process can
Yeah. Yeah.
be, and like how big's the market, all that kind of just stuff you can make easier. I wonder too, this is more futuristic, but could you have AI play the role of a customer, personified as your customer, and give it like real details to where it plays the role of your customer, and you're actually feeding it the ideas or the prototype and then having it react versus taking the time to actually put it in front of a customer.
That's whoa, whoa. That got like the idea that you just built yourself. So if other people are dating their AI built models, I feel like
Yeah.
you could for sure. If people, I thought I read somewhere somebody fed
And
it.
people are doing
Their,
that. The
their
people are doing that today.
right,
Yeah.
they're feeding it their like 12-year-old selves journals, and then they're talking to themselves as the 12
Yeah.
year old. So you're like, why couldn't you trick it into believing it's them? That's
Mhm.
crazy that you just built your own voice of the customer. I'm not sure how you check on hallucinations or accuracy on that one though, because you're like,
Yeah.
before you start, you're out like building digital products, and you're like, the the customer said they wanted it.
But that's the problem. You probably got to
That's a really cool.
feed it all your customer service logs too, so you get some of those angry customers in there too. Because I think AI does have this tendency to be very nice a lot of the time, which
Yeah.
completely off topic. You're talking about the AI girlfriend boyfriend. That's scary to think about because if it's always telling you what you want to hear, maybe it's more attractive than human interactions,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
that's a whole dystopian type of thing
Yeah.
that could happen. Cool.
Yeah. Let's
Any
like
other? Yeah.
I feel like we should all be scared when you start seeing the Boston Dynamics Open AI partnership, and they're like
Yeah.
putting it in like physical bodies, and you're like, oh, like, yeah,
And there's people doing that. I know Figure
there's people
AI.
doing
It's
that.
not. Yeah, the Figure AI is backed by Nvidia, OpenAI. There's more. That's more like purpose built stuff. But there's definitely the AI girlfriend boyfriends. People trying to capitalize on that opportunity as well. But yeah, so that was a fun little exercise. I think that's one thing to think. Just I encourage people to do that. Start leveraging AI in these very simple, like thought experiment type of ways. It's just a helpful way to get started with it. But one thing we've noticed at Patrick's AI when we're working with a client and they're trying to innovate with AI, a lot of times you'll have this. There's a lot of people in the organization using it, and typically it's a lot more than people think. Even if you have these like policies and restrictions in place, they're using it. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're going to be.
yeah.
And then there's also this pattern of siloing where and it's not intentional, but there's just these natural silos within the org, and there's like little bits of innovation happening there, but Sally in accounting doesn't know what Bob in whatever engineering's doing, and there's this kind of ships passing in the night. I don't know if you have any thoughts on how do you account for that? How do you avoid it? Or is that a good thing that there's like this innovation happening in this siloed way? It's almost
Uh,
like the top down versus the bottoms up approach to innovation in some ways.
yeah, I think it's AI relevant. I think that's a broader innovation question.
Yeah.
One of the things that there's a lot of those platforms out there that will like the fancy suggestion box where people put ideas in. And
Mhm.
one of the things that early on I learned from other people in the innovation space was one of the one of the jobs that does is to identify people in your organization who are fundamentally wired
Yeah.
to see those opportunities because that's not everybody's situation. So running one of those suggestion box or any kind of innovation program where you allow people to self-select, one
Mhm.
of the byproducts will be to find Sally and Bob
Yeah.
who are right, who are doing their own things, and then you want to try to make another program where you intentionally leverage more of a workshop program. Like at M Holland, we ran it quarterly.
Mhm.
We would pick a top-down strategic topic, and we would
Okay.
grab those innovators from across. You would harness this thing that makes them special,
Mhm.
and they start to know who they are. And that's really my answer to your question, which is you want to build a vehicle and a network so that they know who they are, and that
Mhm.
there's this almost it feels like an ERG, right? Like an enterprise resource group. Like
Yeah.
instead of people who have dogs, you're like the innovators
Yeah.
ERG, and you want to find them and then help them make relationships to one another, and then leverage that community as an org because the employee is going to have a wickedly unique experience, right?
Mm.
All of a sudden, their day job is an accountant, but they get pulled in to do all this innovation piece, and the organization gets value out of having those folks, right, and retaining them.
Yeah. No, I like that. So if I play that back, there's the top down piece is make it clear the big hairy problems, the outcomes you're looking to achieve. The bottoms up is identify those just people that are naturally prone to innovation. And then the other part is helping facilitate the connection, not actually dictating what to do, but just making sure that Bob knows who Sally is and that they're both
Right.
doing some cool stuff. I like that.
Yeah, turn them loose on the big hairy problem, the top down hairy
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sticking in the same thread of the process side of it, what's your take? Anything that you've seen that's effective? I've seen stage gating type process, the incubator, the side lab, anything more tactical in the process side. I saw you speaking in another podcast about how you may not have a ton of funding for this stuff, but how do you can almost do it in some different ways where you're doing something on the side, you show the value, and then it's, like, easy to say yes to as well, right?
Yeah. So I we've stood up innovation programs that sort of in Vista, we're in the very early stages. At M Holland, we
Mhm.
still run up. In both those cases, we were coming from zero. If you
Yeah.
have somebody from IBM who wants to talk about their innovation program, like they're gonna dust me, right? So we don't have I don't have a lot of what do you do with an established program? What are the
Mhm.
stage gating mechanisms? We're talking about how do you get it off the ground? How do you get
Yeah,
people
which is
engaged?
important.
How
Yep.
do you leverage? So I think about it's a lot of heavy lifting, like an iceberg, right? So people are going to show up
Mhm.
to this workshop and they're going to have a blast for 2 hours or 90 minutes. Before that workshop, a ton of work has to go into thinking about the exercises and the pre-reads and how you're going to put
Mhm.
people in the right mindset and who'd you pick. And when they're all done, there's all this work about documenting all the stuff, turning an artifact, and then how do you curate the connections that group of people who exist in there? Because you want them to keep talking to each other when they go back to their desks, right? That's a whole
Mhm.
nother set of value. So there's this a lot of back end work, but you have to do that for the program to be credible
Yeah.
and for people to believe in it. And you have to create visibility, right? When someone's idea finally makes it to production, that's got to make the newsletter, right? In the town hall, when we talk about stats, you should be putting the number of new ideas that we've completed or the number of hours that the innovation team has, right? The innovation group has stayed,
Yeah.
right? This idea that you make it present and you celebrate it is how you get that flywheel turning. So there's not, it's a lot of, it's a lot of digging ditches and like dirty work initially
Yeah.
to get. Think about how much work it is to plan a really amazing party
Mhm.
and like people show up and then the cleanup afterwards. And so that's a lot about any of these programs. It requires people to believe that they're real so that they put their energy into it. And it
Yeah.
doesn't take a lot for you to ruin that, right? If you don't send the artifacts out or it's not a really compelling workshop, and then people aren't going to volunteer next time, and then
Mm,
the ship has left the harbor. Scale it so that you can maintain it. Don't overcommit, because delivering on those commitments is way more important than having some big, bold, fancy thing.
I like that. Yeah, it's almost back to the home run versus the base hit. If you're trying to stand up an innovation program, start with the base hit within the program itself. And the customer, like AI customer idea, I was trying to find it a second
Your
ago, but just
virtual
for
customer,
listeners, yeah, that idea. So where that triggered from, and I was looking it up. Season 2, episode 7, we had Catherine Von Jett on. So she was the past innovation leader at Salesforce, like really cool conversation. She's got a new startup called Tough Day, so go check that out. But she's doing that. She's using these like synthetic humans and playing them as customers, and that's how she's quickly testing out her new product. So like
well,
there's people doing this stuff today, which is pretty
that's
crazy. I
pretty
can't
cool.
remember where it was from, but for anybody who wants to go back and check that one out. So getting close to wrapping things up here, I'm curious just from outside of just the innovation discussion, you as a CIO or just human in general, like what areas of AI most excite you or scare you of what's possible with this? It could be business setting or in just the personal life or whatnot.
Yeah, I'm a mild buzzkill on this topic.
Yeah.
I'm very worried about the job displacement piece that I don't think we can
Hmm.
really comprehend. But I think hit on lots of the things that get me excited. It
Yeah.
feels like the ability to add capabilities at the drop of a hat. Like I can draw, I can code, I can like all these things that are within arm's reach of anybody who has the right sort of prompts. And I think the prompts will go away over time. You'll move into natural
Yeah.
language, which will be a whole another level of access, right? Because today the prompt engineer is the barrier to leveraging those things. You're looking at this additive companion who can
Hmm.
plug all the gaps, which is great. I think about again as adults, our skills are already semi-baked, right? I can't go back and get that skill, but now I can just add it via AI.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that the old calculator problem? I don't know. It's your parents. My parents never let me have a digital watch because they're like, oh, you're going to get lazy. You won't be able to tell time. You got to have the hand.
Yep. Yep.
And you're like, you're worried about now, like kids in school somewhere, like, how do we ensure that they learn the actual core skills so that
Hmm.
the AI is additive, not a substitute for that? I
Hmm.
think it's weird to say that, but I think it's going to impact the education system.
Oh, in a big way. And this is, I got two thoughts on this in the education discussion. This has come up a couple of times in episodes, which is interesting, which means that a lot of people are thinking about it. But in my mind, I feel like education to date's been so much based on like memorization and all these things. And then when you have something like ChatGPT and Google did a lot of this, you know, you don't need that. So I almost wonder if there's more value in teaching the logic, the problem solving, but hell, AI might
Yeah.
take that on as well. But there's maybe more value in those pieces, and access to information is just ubiquitous in a very easy way there. But yeah, in
Yeah.
on the go ahead.
No, just say teaching people the skills to will come full circle at the top of the right.
Yeah.
You're like, why is change so hard? Where you're like, I don't know that anybody ever taught you the skills to adapt, right? When you think about you're in the technology space, every year you've got to learn a new set of stuff, right? If I'm a
Mhm.
developer, I have to stay current, I have to learn new things. Those aren't nobody taught you adaptability as a skill set. Nobody
Yeah.
taught you how do you eat a whole new subject matter from scratch? Go, right?
Mhm.
That seems like that's maybe the order of the day. Is that's the new generation of skills we need.
Yeah, and the other point you made too on I try to have this like half glass full view of it on the job displacement thing. I heard Benedict Evans, who's really interesting on everything
Sorry.
happening with AI. He talked about this concept of back when the word processor came out and you can create all these crazy fonts, people were saying, "Oh, there's no need for like designers anymore." And look at what's happened. It's like whole new functions we never even thought about when it comes to design, graphic design, all these different things. So my hope is it like creates this whole new type of jobs and opportunities and things like that. But we'll see. We'll see over time
It
and
will,
see how it plays out.
they all have.
Yeah.
There's some truth in both sides of that story. Every time we
Oh
have one
yeah.
of those big revolutions, right?
Yeah, there's gonna be positives and negatives, no matter what, with any type of big transformation like this. But Neil, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. Great conversation. Really enjoyed it. Where can people find you? Find Envista Forensics if they want to check y'all out.
We're at InvistaForensics.com, and I'm out there on LinkedIn. Yeah, would love to chat. Thanks for the invite today. It has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to talking to anybody else who wants to keep talking about it.
Nice. Sounds good. Thank you, Neil. Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com.